Hi, welcome to Budget MTG Decks. All magic fun, all cards under $1. I'm David, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be evaluating and reviewing the 2018 pre-constructed commander deck Adaptive Enchantment. Now, not only are we going to be going over every single card in the deck and evaluating it to see whether it's good or bad, but we're also going to be giving non-budget upgrade suggestions totaling no more than $25. So let's have a look at our commander. And our commander is Estrid the Masked. For 1, a green, a white, and a blue, we get a 3 loyalty planeswalker. Now this planeswalker is allowed to be your commander, unlike the rest of the commanders. Her +2 is untap each enchanted permanent you own. So right off the bat, we already see that this commander really cares about enchantments. The -1 is to create a white aura enchantment token named Mask. Now this Mask we're going to attach to another target permanent, so we cannot use it to enchant Estrid. But this token has enchant permanent and totem armor. Now this means that it's an aura, and the totem armor means that should the permanent it's attached to be destroyed, we're going to be destroying the aura instead. So it's really cool. So it's a nice little protection for other stuff on the battlefield, and of course it also counts as an enchantment itself, this Mask. And the -7 is put the top 7 cards of your library into your graveyard, then return all non-aura enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Then do the same for the aura cards. Okay, so basically we're going to be returning all of our enchantments back from the graveyard to the battlefield. So that is a awesome ultimate. So what is going to be the role of the commander is going to be to support the theme of the deck, and the theme of the deck is, well, enchantments. The deck cares about enchantments, and therefore the cards they're going to be needing in this deck, or the cards that Wizard of the Coast has chosen to include, as I have divided them according to our methodology here on the channel. We've got 1 commander, 25 enchantment cards, 8 removal cards, 10 cards which give some kind of advantage, 17 utility cards, and 39 lands. So let's get started with the enchantment cards. We divided the enchantment cards into those cards that have synergy with enchantments, so which are not per se enchantments themselves, and the auras, which we're going to be wanting to put on top of creatures to either make them better, to protect them in some form. The first of our cards is Aura Gnarlid for 2 and a green. So for 3 mana, it's a 2/2 beast, and it states that creatures with power less than Aura Gnarlid's power can't block it. And additionally, it gets +1/+1 for each aura on the battlefield. Now, what's really cool about this creature is we're going to be playing lots of auras, we're going to be playing lots of enchantments, and this guy is going to be getting bigger for each of the auras, so it doesn't count the enchantments, but we do have plenty of auras, and we do not have to enchant Aura Gnarlid with the auras to be getting the benefit. So it's cool. We could go kind of a Voltron strategy, put everything on top of this guy, but we don't have to for it to be to have a benefit. Yavimaya Enchantress is next for 2 and a green. It's a 2/2 human druid, and Yavimaya Enchantress gets +1/+1 for each enchantment on the battlefield. So this is basically the Aura Gnarlid on steroids, except it is of course easier to block because the Aura Gnarlid has the clause that creatures with power less than this creature can't block it. Yavimaya Enchantress doesn't have that, but we will have many more enchantments than just auras, so that means that Yavimaya Enchantress gets a bigger benefit, bigger boost from that. Next up, Enchantress's Presence for 2 and a green. So for 3 mana, it's an enchantment, and it states that whenever you play an enchantment spell, draw a card. Now this is exactly the kind of card that you want in this deck. This deck cares about enchantments. You want to be playing all the enchantments, and every time you play an enchantment, whether that be just a regular enchantment or an aura, we want to be drawing a card. So this is super nice. What makes it extra strong is, of course, that it's an enchantment itself, and that means that it's going to be less susceptible to board wipes, which creatures, of course, have a bigger chance of dying to. Tuvasa the Sunlit is next for a green, a white, and a blue. So for 3 mana total, we get a 1/1 legendary Merfolk Shaman. Now this creature gets +1/+1 for each enchantment you control. So this is different than the Yavimaya enchantments, which counts all enchantments on the battlefield. Of course, we're going to be playing tons anyway, so it doesn't really matter. It's going to get big. And whenever you cast your first enchantment, each turn, draw a card. So it's kind of a combination of the cards we've seen before. Not only is it going to be drawing us cards when we play enchantment, but it also grows. However, it only counts our own enchantments, and it only draws us a card on the first enchantment we play that turn. Needless to say, still for 3 mana, very strong on this deck. Eidolon of Blossoms is up next for 2 and 2 green. So for 4 mana, it's a 2/2 enchantment creature spirit. So this means that this creature counts as a creature, but also counts as an enchantment. So anything that counts enchantments will trigger from Eidolon of Blossoms. And it has Constellation, which means that whenever this creature or another enchantment enters the battlefield under our control, we're going to be drawing a card. So it replaces itself, which is cool. And later on, of course, also is going to be counting out all those auras and enchantments and giving us cards for that. Super sweet. So far, the deck is looking pretty sweet. Castilla the Cultivator is next for 1, a green, a white, and a blue. So for 4 mana, it is a 4/4 legendary enchantment creature. So this guy or girl is pretty big, 4/4 for 4. And it also has, it's an enchantment itself, so that's nice, it counts for the enchantments. Additionally, it has Bestow, which means that we can cast this card for the Bestow cost, which is 3, a green, a white, and a blue, so for 6 mana rather than 4. And then we can play it as an aura on another creature, giving that creature +4/+4 and the ability. And then should that creature die, then the bestowed aura will fall off and become Castilla the Cultivator as a creature. So you get a little bit more value out of it. So additionally, it states that whenever enchanted creature or enchantment creature you control attacks, draw a card. So all our enchantment creatures, we have creatures that are enchantments. When they attack, we're going to be drawing a card. So for example, the Eidolon of Blossoms. But it also will give us a card if this creature attacks or the creature on which this is bestowed upon will attack. So this is pretty nice. It's got very nice synergy so far with the auras. Next up is Ajani's Chosen for 2 and 2 white. It's a 3/3 cat soldier, so the body's fine for what it is. And additionally, it states that whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, I'm going to put a 2/2 white cat creature token onto the battlefield. If that enchantment should happen to be an aura, then we can also attach it onto that token. So this is pretty sweet because it allows us to go a little bit wide. You know, aura strategies or enchantment strategies in general usually go a little bit heavy towards the auras anyway, which means we're trying to pile a lot of stuff on just a few creatures, which means we're going tall. We're building a Voltron strategy, as they call it. We're building very big creatures. Now, Ajani's Chosen gives us the ability that while we're doing that, while we are building a really big creature to attack our opponents with, we're also creating an army of smaller creatures to protect us, and that gives us a little bit more versatility. Whitewater Naiads for 3 and 2 blue, so for 5 mana, it is a 4/4 enchantment creature. Nymph. So again, this creature does count as an enchantment in addition to being a creature. It also has Constellation, which means when it enters or whenever another enchantment enters the battlefield under our control, target creature can't be blocked this turn. Perfect, because we will be going kind of Voltron strategy, putting a lot of auras on a single creature, making it really big and powerful. And it's really nice that we will be able to make that creature unblockable to make sure we get all that damage to it and it doesn't get chump blocked. Sigil of the Empty Throne is next for 3 and 2 white. It's an enchantment, and whenever you cast an enchantment spell, we're going to be putting a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying onto the battlefield. That states over here, it's not whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield, it says whenever you cast an enchantment spell. So that's an important distinction. When we're if we be flickering enchantments, something that wouldn't trigger is only really when we are casting it. But that also means that should we cast an enchantment and somebody counters it, we're still going to get that 4/4 angel. Then we have Elderwood Scion for 3, a green and a white. So for 5 mana, we get a 4/4 elemental with trample and lifelink. So this is pretty cool. This is the kind of creature that you want to be enchanting a lot of stuff on because the trample means it's difficult to block and the lifelink means it's going to be getting us back in the game. Additionally, states that spells you cast at target Elderwood Scion cost 2 less to cast. So that all our auras, which we're going to be using to enchant Elderwood Scion, are going to be cheaper as well, nicely discounted. And additionally, spells your opponents cast at target Elderwood Scion cost 2 more. Okay, so it makes it even more difficult for our opponents to get rid of it because they have to pay that premium. So they have to make the decision, is it worth it? So Elderwood Scion, a perfect creature for us to pile on the auras on top of. Heavenly Blade Master is next, and this is one of the new cards being introduced in this deck. For 5 and a white, so for 6 mana, it's a 3/6 flying double striker. So essentially, this thing, just vanilla, would be, it's kind of like a 6/6 flyer, which is very nice. Additionally, when it enters the battlefield, you may attach any number of auras and equipment you control to it. Bam, that's cool. So later on in the game, you pop this down, and you can make sure that maybe if it was on all your auras were on a smaller creature because you were just trying to get in there and protect yourself. Now Heavenly Blade Master comes in, you put all that stuff on, all the cool auras on Heavenly Blade Master, and we're going to be able to, it's going to be bigger, and the double strike means it's going to be doing tons of damage, and flying, the evasion is nothing to sniff at. It also states that other creatures you control get +1/+1 for each aura and equipment attached to Heavenly Blade Master. So should we have a couple of those 2/2 cats lying around, then those will also get bigger, even though Heavenly Blade Master is already a force to be reckoned. So this is sweet, perfect. Bruna, Light of Alabaster for 3 white and a 2 white and a blue. So for 6 mana, it is a 5/5 legendary angel with flying and vigilance. The vigilance is cool because when we got a big creature that we put a lot of stuff on top of, being able to attack and also block with it means it keeps us much safer than it's a creature that we have to attack with and taps, and then we don't have any good defense anymore. So it states that whenever Bruna, Light of Alabaster attacks or blocks, you may attach to it any number of auras on the battlefield. You may put onto the battlefield, attached to it any number of aura cards that you could enchant from your graveyard and your hand. So that basically means all this stuff that maybe you lost before, we're going to put that on her, and then after we declare the attacker, of course, and then she's going to be super massive. And it's really nice because we may have lost auras during the course of the game, and we might have some expensive auras in our hand, and then this allows us to cheat that all into play. Then we have Nylea's Colossus for 6 and a green, so that's 7 mana, quite hefty. We get a 6/6 enchantment creature. Once again, this counts as a creature and as an enchantment, and it has Constellation, which means that when this creature enters or whenever another enchantment enters the battlefield under our control, we're going to double target creature's power and toughness until the end of turn. So that is going to be really nice for those Voltron strategies. Nothing to sniff at if you were to target, for example, Heavenly Blade Master with that. And finally, of the synergy cards, we have a Silent Sentinel for 5 and 2 white. It is a 4/6 flyer. It's just a regular creature, but when this creature attacks, you may return target enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So of course, we're very happy with that because this gives us some recursion. That means we're not afraid to start playing those auras and enchantments early on in the game, because what we're going to be able to be doing is, should we lose them later on, we're just going to get them back with Silent Sentinel. Then we move on to the auras. And now finally we're getting into the department where we're going to be looking to see if we're going to be doing some upgrades, because we haven't actually replaced any of the cards yet that we're talking about, that we've talked until now. They're actually all very good for this deck. The first of the auras, which we're also still going to keep in there, Il Umbra for 1 and a blue. It's an enchantment aura with flash, so it's cool because we use it as a surprise when somebody uses removal on one of our creatures. We can use it as a surprise. We're going to enchant that creature. It's going to get +1/+1 and Totem Armor. Now, we already discussed before, Totem Armor means if the enchanted creature would be destroyed, instead remove all damage from it and destroy this aura. So this is very nice protection against targeted removal, against board wipes, against pretty much everything except exiling. And also, of course, -1 or -X, because when its toughness becomes 0 less, then it doesn't matter. It's still gonna die. Then we move on to Vow of Wildness for 2 and a green. So for 3 mana total, it's an aura. We're going to enchant a creature, and that creature is going to get +3/+3 and trample, but will not be able to attack us or a planeswalker we control anymore. So this, I understand why they put this card in there. It's a nice political card because you can either put it on one of your creatures and you can attack, or you can put it on one of your opponent's creatures and then make sure they can't attack you with it anymore, make sure they swing in against your opponents. But I don't think that it is truly worth the card slot in this deck. So we've actually found another card that we're going to replace with it. What's important to remember is that these cards are not always going to be one-to-one strict upgrades, which means that, for example, if this would say, oh, this is an aura that gives +3/+3, then we're going to find an upgrade that gives +5/+5. That's not how it works. What we're going to be doing is we looked at what cards are not really that strong in the deck, and we try to look for cards that have much more synergy, much more strength, that make the deck overall much stronger, regardless of what category the replaced card is in. So as a good example, so Vow of Wildness we'd like to take out, and we're going to be upgrading it with Skybind for 3 and 2 white. It's an enchantment with Constellation, which means that when this enchantment or another enchantment enters the battlefield under our control, we're going to exile target non-enchantment permanent, so non-enchantment, and we're going to turn that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So what's handy with this is we can either use it for our own enter the battlefield abilities, or we can use it to get rid of an opponent's blocker, which we otherwise can't deal with every single turn. Then we can attack, and at the end of the turn they're going to get it back. So that is an upgrade card. Next up is a Vow of Flight for 2 and a blue. So for 3 mana, it's an aura. We're going to enchant a creature, and that creature is going to get +2/+2 and flying, and again, can't attack us or a planeswalker we control. So it's exactly the same as the Vow of Wildness, but now the blue version. We're also going to be replacing this card with an upgrade card. Now, the card we're going to be using to replace Vow of Flight is Ephara's Enlightenment for 1, a white, and a blue. So for 3 mana, it's an aura. We're going to enchant a creature, and then we're going to put a +1/+1 on that enchanted creature, +1/+1 counter on that enchanted creature. The creature is going to have flying, so it's kind of like Vow of Flight. It gives that flying. And additionally, whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may return Ephara's Enlightenment to its owner's hand. Now, this is very important. Okay, the fact that it gives the evasion with the fly is cool. The +1/+1 counter, you know, we could do it repeatedly. What's extra cool is that every time we play a creature, we're going to be returning this card back to our hand and then playing it again, either on the same creature or on a different creature, which means that we're going to get that enchantment trigger again, either the casting or the enchantment entering the battlefield. And that's really important because, as we saw already, a lot of the cards care about enchantments entering in the battlefield, and having something that constantly we're going to be returning back to our hand to be able to cast again and have it enter the battlefield again is going to get us a lot of value in the long run. Next up of the regular cards that are just still part of the deck, Unquestioned Authority for 2 and a white. It's an aura, and when it enters the battlefield, we're going to draw a card. And additionally, this creature has protection. This creature has protection from creatures. So what essentially that means is protection means that it won't be able to be targeted, blocked, won't be able to be dealt damage. So this thing is going to be in combat unstoppable, and we can also use it to block, and it won't be able to die to other creatures either. So that basically means that we have an unblockable creature or an indestructible blocker. Essentially, that's kind of what it seems like. Of course, it can still be dealt with targeted removal, but just won't be able to be targeted or killed by other creatures, which is very nice. Boon Satyr is up next for 1 and 2 green. It's a 4/2 flash creature, so we can play this as a surprise. It also has Bestow for 5, which means we can also play this as an enchantment. As an aura, because it's already an enchantment either way, but as an aura on another creature, and then that creature gets +4/+2. Now, I don't think this card is very nice. Sure, it's cheap for a lot of power, but is this really what you want to be doing? I don't think so. I think we would rather have something that maybe protects us a little bit better. So we have suggested an upgrade card. And the upgrade card is Lightmine Field for 2 and 2 white. So for 4 mana, it's an enchantment. And whenever 1 or more creatures attack, Lightmine Field deals damage to each of those creatures equal to the number of attacking creatures. Now, this is exactly the kind of stuff that you really want to have in an enchantment or Voltron-based deck. We're going to be attacking with very few creatures, which are going to be very large, which means that if we attack with one 10/10 creature, we don't mind that it takes 1 point of damage. That's fine. But if our opponents have 10 1/1 goblins and they want to attack with us, all of a sudden each one of those goblins is going to be taking 10 damage, and then they will not be able to survive that. So it makes it extremely difficult for those opponents that are not going Voltron strategy, like the way we are, to be able to attack us. And the great thing about it is that it's not just whenever they attack us, it's just whenever they attack, period. So we're really shutting down our opponents from being able to deal damage, and we should still be able to attack with impunity with our very big enchanted creature. Unflinching Courage is next for 1 a green and a white. This is one of the cards that's just in the deck. And enchanted creature gets +2/+2, has trample and lifelink. Now, what's nice about having a really big creature is to give it evasion, so it doesn't get blocked very easily. And of course, also nice to have really big creatures with lifelink, means it gets us back in the game once again. Bear Umbra is up next for 2 and 2 green. It's an aura. Now, it's also got totem armor, which means that, once again, should our creature get destroyed with totem armor on it, we're actually going to destroy the aura instead, and the creature is going to survive. So that's a nice little insurance on it. Additionally, the creature is going to get +2/+2. And it has, whenever this creature attacks, untaps all lands you control. Now, needless to say, this is huge. This is massive for ramping. The +2/+2, negligible. The totem armor, nice to protect it, but just being able to every single turn attack and then getting basically, essentially, we're going to have double our mana is huge and not to be underestimated. Very, very strong card. I'm very happy to see that it's in here. Sage's Reverie is up next for 3 and a white. So for 4 mana, it's an enchantment, aura. And when it enters the battlefield, we're going to draw a card for each aura you control that's attached to a creature. So that's situational. It could be that you get loads of cards you draw. Could be that you don't draw anything, or we'll draw one. And you're going to get +1/+1 for each aura you control that's attached to a creature. That creature. Okay. Well, the effect is fine. You could leave it in there. I think for 4 mana, it's not good enough. So we would actually like to upgrade it with a different card. And the card we're going to replace it with is Aqueous Form for a single blue. So we're going much lower in cost. We're going to make sure that this creature is unblockable. And additionally, whenever this creature attacks, scry 1. So it doesn't draw us cards, but it's consistently going to be fixing the top of our deck, making sure that we get better and better cards every single time. And the unblockable is, of course, not to be underestimated with very, very big creatures that we're going to be having. Then we have Celestial Archon for 3 and 2 white. So for 5 mana, it's a 4/4 first striking creature. It's a fine creature. It's an enchantment creature, so it does count towards the enchantment, which is nice. And the bestow cost for 7 is a bit steep to give another creature +4/+4 flying in first strike. So we would actually like to take this card out, and we're going to be upgrading it by putting in instead Sun Titan, one of the most expensive cards that we're putting in this deck. For 4 and 2 white, it's a 6/6 Vigilance Giant, and whenever this creature enters the battlefield or attacks, so when it enters or attacks, so it's going to be doing something every turn. You may return target permanent card with converted mana cost 3 or less from a graveyard to the battlefield. Now, permanent card could be an enchantment, could be a creature, could be an aura, anything. It could even be a land. So anything converted mana cost, as long as it's a permanent, converted mana cost 3 or less, and that is huge. It's big. It can attack. It can block. It's reanimating your stuff. It doesn't just return it back to your hand. That's from the graveyard to the battlefield. So that is going to be absolutely massive. It is an expensive card for a reason, but in this deck, I think you're going to get a lot of value out of it. So definitely a nice little upgrade there. Then up next, Octopus Umbra for 3 and 2 blue. So for 5 mana, it's going to be again an enchantment with totem armor. So this is nice to put on a creature to protect it and make sure that it won't die to that targeted removal or that board wipe. And additionally, enchanted creature has base power and toughness 8/8. Okay, this thing is all of a sudden became a huge threat, regardless of whether you put it on a 1/1. And whenever this creature attacks, you may tap target creature with power 8 or less. Now, this is one of the new cards. It's super strong. It does everything you want it to do. I think it's very reasonably costed. It's going to be making sure you can attack easily because you're tapping something. And additionally, it's going to be protecting your thing. And it's making one of your creatures that you're attacking with already an 8/8. And anything else that you pop on top of that creature is only going to be make it even more attractive attacker or blocker. Beautiful, beautiful card. And then we go to the last of the auras, and that is Epic Proportions for 4 and 2 green. It's a flash aura, which means we can play it at instant speed as a surprise. Enchanted creature gets +5/+5 and trample. Now I think the +5/+5 and trample 4/6 is a bit steep, so we would like to upgrade it to a different card, not a card that does something similar, but a card that does something completely different. And the upgrade card is Flickering Ward for a single white. It's also an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, we're going to choose a color. Then the enchanted creature is going to have protection from the chosen color. So that's cool. We're going to look around. Okay, what are the biggest threats? Are people? Do we think want it to be unblockable against certain creatures' colors, or do we think people have got targeted removal of a certain color? Do we think people have got red deal damage to all creatures? Kind of effects. We're going to pick whatever we think is most dangerous at that point in time. We're going to choose that color to protect our creature against. And most importantly, for a single white, we can return Flickering Ward to its owner's hand. So that is really actually the reason why it's in here, because basically for every 2 mana, 2 white, we're going to be casting it, putting it back into our hand, casting it, putting it back into our hand, and then we're getting all those enchantment triggers every single time, which is going to get us tons and tons of value. Okay, great. Those are the enchantments. Let's now have a look at the removal spells. We divided the removal spells into targeted removal spells and board wipes. Now the first of the targeted removal spells is Soul Snare. For a single white, it's an enchantment that we can pay a white mana and sacrifice to exile target creature that's attacking us or a planeswalker we control. Now this is really nice because number one, it's super cheap. Number two, it's an enchantment. Number three, if we're able to recur it by bringing it back from the graveyard back to our hand, back onto the battlefield, we can use it multiple times. So this is actually very, very sweet and fairly costed as well. So I'm very happy to see this in this deck. Next up is a Ground Seal for 1 and a green. It's an enchantment that when it enters the battlefield, we're going to be drawing a card. And additionally, cards in graveyards can be the targets of spells or abilities. Okay. This is not really what we want to be doing in this deck. We want to be able to access our auras in our graveyard. We want to be able to target them. So yeah, let's get rid of that card. So we're going to be upgrading this card with a different card, and that card is going to be Sphere of Safety for a white and 4, so 4 and a white. For 5 mana, it's an enchantment that says that creatures can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless their controller pays X for each of those creatures, where X is the number of enchantments we control. Now, this is perfect. This is exactly the kind of card that we want in this deck. We're going to have lots of enchantments. We got lots of auras. We got lots of regular enchantments, which means that it's going to become super expensive for our opponents to attack us with even a single creature, let alone attacking us with tons of tokens. Next up is Reclamation Sage for 2 and a green. It's a 2/1 Elf Shaman, and when it enters the battlefield, we're going to be able to destroy target artifact or enchantment. Yeah, sometimes you just want to hit your opponent's artifacts or enchantments. I don't really know why this isn't aura based and why this isn't enchantment based, or why this isn't an enchantment that could do this by sacrificing itself. But I didn't think it was worth the card slot to upgrade it, so it's fine for what it does. Very similarly, we have Dismantling Blow for 2 and a white. So for 3 mana, we can destroy target artifact and enchantment. But if we pay an additional 2 and blue, so for an additional 3 mana, we get to draw 2 cards. So it's nice. It replaces itself and gives us actually an extra card, although we do need to pay 6 mana total for it. Once again, there are cards that do similar stuff, which are aura-based. Once again, enchantment-based. So I don't really see why this card has to be in here, but also not worth it to upgrade. Bant Charm is next for green, a white, and a blue. It's an instant. I'm going to choose one of these 3 options, either destroy target artifact, or put target creature in the bottom of his owner's library, or counter target instant spell. All very decent options. The charms are always solid, so it's fine that it's in there. Then we move on to the board wipes. The first one, Martial Coup for X and 2 white. We're going to put X 1/1 white soldier creature tokens onto the battlefield, and if X is 5 or more, we're going to destroy all other creatures. So we basically pump when stuff gets a little bit too hairy. We're going to pump all our mana into here. We're going to have a bunch of 1/1s, and our opponent's not going to have any of their creatures. So it's pretty decent. Next up is Winds of Wrath for 3 and 2 white. So for 5 mana, it's a sorcerer. We're going to destroy all creatures that aren't enchanted, and they can't be regenerated. So that's super sweet actually, because we're going to have tons of creatures that are going to be enchanted, or even if we only have one, the one that's most powerful is going to be the one that's enchanted. So our opponent's not going to have very much left over. And the last of the board wipes is Phyrexian Rebirth for 4 and 2 white. So for 6 mana, we're going to destroy all creatures, then create an XX colorless horror artifact creature token, where X is the number of creatures destroyed this way. So not only do we wipe the board, do we kill a lot of creatures, but we also have a big fatty. All right, those are the removal spells. Let's have a look at the cards that give us some kind of advantage. We divided the advantage cards into utility cards and random cards. Random because, frankly, we had no idea what the logic was of Wizard of the Coast putting these cards in there. But we're going to start first with the utility cards. Estrid's Invocation is first up for 2 and a blue. It's an enchantment. And you may have Estrid's Invocation enter the battlefield as a copy of any enchantment you control, except it gains at the beginning of your upkeep. You may exile this enchantment. If you do, return it to the battlefield under its control. So basically, every single turn, this is going to be the best enchantment we have. So that's super nice. It gives us great versatility. It's always just going to be the best enchantment that we control. So it's perfect for in this deck. Finest Hour is next for 2, a green, a white, and a blue. So for 5 mana, it's an enchantment with Exalted, which means that whenever one of our creatures attacks by themselves, they're going to get +1/+1. And additionally, whenever a creature you control attacks alone, if it's the first combat phase of the turn, we're going to untap that creature. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. So it's cool. We can have a creature that's completely equipped, It's got a lot of auras attached to it, and we're going to be attacking with that creature alone. Make sure it gets the +1/+1, and then after that combat, untap it, and then we can attack with the rest who we choose in a second combat phase. So that is going to be absolutely brutal. This is exactly what this deck wants. Up next, Archetype of Imagination for 4 and 2 blue. It is a enchantment creature, a 3/2 flyer, and it says that creatures you control have flying, and creatures your opponents control lose flying and can't have or gain flying. So this is actually kind of as if it gives our entire team unblockable, because only our team is going to have flying. But it also makes it really difficult for your opponents to attack each other, because they won't have evasion creatures to attack each other in the sense of flying, because none of them will have flying anymore. So that's actually really nice. We're going to be able to attack much easier. And then we have the last utility called Spawning Grounds for 6 and 2 green. So for 8 mana, that's a whopping price for an aura that we're going to be attaching onto a land, and we can tap that land now to create a 5/5 green beast creature token with trample. Okay, it's pretty cool. I mean, it's nice and flavorful, and a 5/5 trampler is nice. However, I think we're gonna be, because it does cost us a mana as well, because we have to attach it to our lands. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be replacing this card with an upgrade card, and this upgrade card is called Sandwurm Convergence. This one costs 8 mana, so the same price, but this enchantment not only creates at the beginning of your end step a 5/5 green worm creature token without having to tap any lands, so that's a free 5/5 worm every single turn. Additionally, creatures with flying can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. So that's really cool in the sense all those flyers will not be able to attack us anymore. Then we move on to the random cards. So these are the cards that Wizard of the Coast put in. I had no idea why they're in there. I don't see any synergy in the deck, as I tried to rack my brain where they could go, but in the end I had no choice but to make a random pile. So we're going to be looking at those cards right now. The first of the random cards is Ravenous Slime for 2 and a green. So for 3 mana, it's a 1/1 ooze, and it can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, so it can't really be chump blocked in essence. And if a creature an opponent controls would die, instead exile it and put a number of +1/+1 counters equal to that creature's power on Ravenous Slime. Okay, so this is a creature that, regardless of auras, it's still going to be growing really big. So it seems like it's more at home in a deck which likes to use a lot of removal. So we decided to remove this card and upgrade it to a different card, and the card that we've decided to replace it with is Cloud Cover for 2, a white and a blue. It's an enchantment, and whenever another permanent you control becomes a target of a spell or ability your opponent controls, you may return that permanent to its owner's hand. So that basically means that all our big fatties, all our cool, strong creatures or enchantments that people are going to be wanting to remove, if somebody uses a target of removal against it, from our opponent, so not when we are enchanting ourselves with our R's, but when our opponent was using target removal against it, we can choose, oh, you know what, instead of this creature, being destroyed, being exiled, I'll just return it back to my hand. Oh, instead of that enchantment that you decided to naturalize, I'm going to return it back to my hand, cast it again later. So it's a nice little insurance to make sure stuff doesn't get destroyed, but goes back to our hand instead. Loyal Unicorn is next for 3 and a white. It's a 3/4 vigilance creature with Lieutenant, which means that if we also control our commander, then at the beginning of combat on our turn, if we do control our commander, we're going to prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to creatures you control this turn. And other creatures you control gain vigilance until the end of turn. So what this card essentially means is as long as we've got our commander, we can basically attack with impunity, and we'll also have blockers for the next turn. So it's a relatively solid card. Seems to me more at home in a deck that likes to go wide with a lot of creatures, but it's not worth it to replace this one. Arixmethes, Slumbering Isle. I don't know how to pronounce that. It's some kind of creature Kraken for 2, a green and a blue. So for 4 mana, it is a 12/12 Kraken, but it doesn't come in like that. You see, when it enters the battlefield, it's going to come in tapped with 5 slumber counters on it. And as long as this guy's got slumber counter on it, it is a land and not a creature. So essentially, we're going to be paying 4 mana for a land. And then whenever you cast a spell, you may remove slumber counter from our community. So and it also, we can tap it for a green and a blue. So that's gives us a little bit more value than a regular land. But still, we're going to be playing spells, and especially with some of those spells, that allows us to return stuff. It could be nice to be able to get it back, but in the end of the day, all it is just a big fat creature. So we decided to upgrade this card and take it out. We decided to upgrade it with something that's a little bit more relevant to the enchantment theme, and that is Hanna Ship's Navigator. For 1, a white and a blue, we get a 1/2 legendary human artificer. And for a 1, a white and a blue, and tapping it, we can return target artifact or enchantment card from our graveyard back to our hands. So it's a nice recursion, be able to get more value out of those enchantments that this deck is supposed to care about. Then we have Loyal Guardian for 4 and a green. So for 5 mana, it's a 4/4 Trampler. So solid body, it's fine. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control your commander, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So it's the same lieutenant effect like the Loyal Unicorn. In this case, it cares a lot about having a lot of creatures. In this case, I don't think that this deck cares too much about that, but it's relatively solid, so we're just going to leave it in there. Up next, Imperial Storm for 4 and 2 white. So for 6 mana, it's a sorcery. And for each time you cast a spell, copy it for each time you've cast your commander from the command zone this game. So of course, if you've only cast it once, then we're going to be getting 2. So we're going to be creating a 4/4 angel creature token with flying twice. And as the game progresses, we're going to be getting more angels. However, I think it's pretty steep for what we're going to be getting. And there's just so much better stuff that actually cares about enchantments. So we'd actually like to replace it with a different card that does care about enchantments, and that is Starfield of Nyx for 4 and a white. So the enchantment states at the beginning of your upkeep, you may return target enchantment card from your graveyard to your battlefield. So cool, now we're getting that. This cares about the enchantments. You know, the Imperial Storm just gives you a few flyers, which is fine, but we want this deck to be about enchantment. So this card is going to be getting us, at the beginning of our upkeep, every single turn, getting us back an enchantment card from our graveyard back to the battlefield. And as long as you control 5 or more enchantments, each other non-aura enchantment we control is a creature in addition to those types with base power and toughness equal to its converted mana cost. So we're going to be able to actually create an army with the enchantments that we have. And it doesn't itself become a creature, so it won't be susceptible to board wipe. So essentially, even if there would be a board wipe, we're still going to be able to return stuff back to the battlefield every single turn. And the last of the advantage cards is Hydra Omnivore for 4 and 2 green. So for 6 mana, it's an 8/8. And additionally, this creature deals combat. When it deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to each other opponent. So this is a lovely creature to be attaching lots of evasion, lots of pumping auras onto it. Make it nice, big, and chunky. Attacking the opponent with least chance to be able to stop damage. And then we're also dealing that damage to our opponents, closing the game out really fast. Awesome card. That is it for the advantage cards. Let's have a look at the utility cards. We divided the utility cards into draw cards, so the cards that give us more cards, and the ramp cards, which are going to be giving us more mana. The first of the draw cards is Myth Unbound. It's one of the new cards for 2 and a green. So for 3 mana, it's an enchantment, and it states that your commander costs 1 less to cast for each time it's been cast from the command zone each time. So it's kind of a discount, kind of a ramp for your commander in a sense. But it also states that whenever your commander is put into the command zone from anywhere, we're going to be drawing a card. So essentially, every time our commander dies, we're going to be drawing a card, or dies when the planeswalker goes to the command zone. I don't think that's worth, if it would say a creature or something like that, whenever that dies, that will give us so much more value. But this is just simply not enough, so we're going to be removing this card and upgrading it into Followed Footsteps. For 3 and 2 blue, it's an enchantment aura. And this aura states that at the beginning of your upkeep, we're going to put a token as a copy of enchanted creature onto the battlefield. Now, this is excellent. We've got awesome creatures that are not legendary in this deck, which we'd love to have multiples of. And this is an enchantment, which means we're going to be able to get it back should that creature be removed at some point in time. So it does everything you want. It creates a huge army. And if you, for example, put it on a creature that counts enchantments, we're going to be getting more of those. And then every time we cast an enchantment, we're going to get multiple trigger effects of that. So that is super, super strong. I love it. Next up is Loyal Drake for 2 and a blue. So for 3 mana, it's a 2/2 flyer with Lieutenant. And as long as we control our Lieutenant, then at the beginning of combat of our turn, we're going to be drawing a card. It's a nice little, drawing a card every single turn, and a 2/2 flyer. Then we have Everwatching Threshold for 2 and a blue. So for 3 mana, we get an enchantment that states that whenever an opponent attacks you or a planeswalker you control with 1 or more creatures, we're going to be drawing a card. So it's not per creature, just as long as they attack us, basically, we're going to be drawing a card. So that kind of dissuades people from attacking us, because every time they attack us, we will be drawing a card. Next up is Crufix Insight for 2 and a green. It's a sorcery. We're going to be revealing the top 6 cards of our library. We're going to put 3 enchantment cards from among them into our hand, and the rest revealed of the cards revealed, put them into the graveyard. So this is a nice little draw. We'll be looking at the top 6 cards. There's bound to be 3 enchantment cards in there, because this deck is chock full of enchantments. Then we have a Snake Umbra for 2 and a green. It is an aura with totem armor. So once again, very nice to put this on a big chunky creature because it protects it. And it also gives the creature +1/+1. And whenever this creature deals damage to an opponent, you may draw a card. Nice. Dictate of Crufix is next for 1 and 2 blue. It has flash, and it states that at the beginning of each player's draw step, that player draws an additional card. So how we're going to be playing this is always waiting till the end of our opponent's last turn, or last opponent's turn, and then we're going to be playing it flash so that we're the first person to be getting value out of this. We don't want to be playing this at the end of our turn so that the next opponent gets to draw an additional card. We want to be the first person to get an advantage out of that. Cold-Eyed Selkie is next for 1 and 2 hybrid mana, green or blue. So for 3 mana, it's a 1/1 with Island Walk, so we can attack our opponents who have an island without being able to be blocked. And it also states that whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, we may draw that many cards. So what we want to be attaching a lot of enchantments, a lot of cool auras onto this creature. Make sure it's nice and big. Attack the opponent that can't block either because we put evasion onto it or because they control an island, and then we're going to be drawing tons and tons of cards. Daxos of Meletis is next for 1, a white and a blue. We get a 2/2 legendary human soldier, and it can't be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater. So essentially, once again, once we get this creature, we boost its power and toughness over 3, then it won't be able to die in combat pretty much unless they multiple block it. So it makes it really difficult to block. So we're going to make this guy really big. And it also states that whenever this guy deals combat damage to a player, we're going to exile the top card of that player's library, gain life equal to that card's converted mana cost, and then until the end of turn, we're allowed to cast that card and use mana as those mana of any color to cast it. So that means we're going to be able to play some of our opponent's stuff. And then we have a Righteous Authority for 3, a white and a blue. It's an aura that gives the creature +1/+1 for each card in our controller's hand. And additionally, at the beginning of the draw step of enchanted player's controller's turn, that player may draw an additional card. So it's going to give us an extra card every single turn. We already have quite a lot of ways to draw spells and draw cards, and I think this one's a little bit vulnerable, so we actually decided to remove this card from the deck. And we're going to be upgrading it with a different card completely, and that card is a Fountain Watch for 3 and 2 white. It is a 2/4 creature, and this creature states that artifacts and enchantments you control can't be the target of spells or abilities. That essentially means that all our artifacts and all our enchantments, including our auras, all have Shroud. It means they cannot be targeted anymore. Great insurance for those constellation creatures, those enchantment creatures. And of course, make sure that all regular enchantments on the battlefield cannot be naturalized or something like it, cannot be removed anymore by target removal. So that is very strong. Then we have Creeping Renaissance for 3 and 2 green. It's a sorcery, so for 5 mana, we can choose a permanent type. Permanent type could be, either lands or creatures, but it can also be enchantments. So we'll probably be picking enchantments, and then we return all cards of the chosen type from your graveyard back to our hand. That already alone makes it totally worth it to have it in the deck. However, it also has flashback for 7, which means once we've used it once, we can use it again later on in the game, and that means that this card is very powerful. And the last of the draw cards is Genesis Storm for 4 and 2 green. It states that whenever you cast a spell, we're going to copy it for each time you cast your commander from the command zone this game. So we would be getting multiple triggers of this. We're going to reveal the top card of our library until we reveal a non-land permanent card. So this could be an enchantment, for example. And we could put that card onto the battlefield. Then put all cards revealed this way that weren't put into the battlefield at the bottom of our library in a random order. So if it's let's say realistically, we could get, let's say, 3 triggers out of it, getting 3 enchantments or combination of creatures onto the battlefield. We had a look at it, and we decided that since it was so dependent on how many times you cast your commander from the command zone, We didn't think it was strong enough, so actually we decided to replace this card with Genesis Wave. Genesis Wave costs X and 3 green, and it's a sorcery. And we're going to be revealing the top X cards of our library and then putting any number of permanent cards with converted mana cost X or less from among them onto the battlefield. Then put all cards revealed this way that weren't put onto the battlefield into your graveyards. That sounds very similar, but in essence, I believe that Genesis Wave will get us a lot more value because, let's say if we put in 9 mana, for example, so we'll go a little bit more nuts, put a little bit more, then we're going to be looking at the top 6 cards and put any number of permanent cards which are 6 or less onto the battlefield. And that is, of course, going to be pretty much everything. So that is much more powerful, I believe. Then we move on to the ramp cards. Naturally, Wizards of the Coast has put in Soul Ring. For a single mana, it's an artifact that taps for 2 colorless mana. It's a very unoriginal card, considering that pretty much every single deck that we don't build probably has it. It is over $1, so we never include it in our decks, but it is in here, and it is also in all the other pre-constructed decks that Wizards of the Coast makes. The next one is Wild Growth. For single green, we're going to be able to enchant a land. So it's an aura for a land. And now whenever that land is tapped for mana, we're going to add an additional green to our mana pool. Up next is Fertile Ground for 1 and a green. We're also going to be enchanting a land. And then whenever this land is tapped for mana, we're going to add an additional mana of any color. So Wild Growth gives us only an extra green. Fertile Ground makes sure it gives us of any other color we want. Herald of the Pantheon for 1 and a green. It's a 2/2 Centaur Shaman. It states that enchantment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. That's nice. Little discount right there for our enchantments. And whenever we cast an enchantment spell, we're going to gain 1 life. Nothing too exciting, but, you know, perfectly on theme. And the last of the ramp cards. It's not the last of the ramp cards. Next of the ramp cards, Overgrowth for 2 and a green. It's an aura. We're going to be enchanting a land. And now whenever the land taps for mana, we're going to get an additional 2 green for our mana pool. And then the last of the ramp cards is Dawn's Reflection for 3 and a green. So for 4 mana, when enchanted land is tapped for mana, we're going to add 2 mana of any combination of colors. So the first one gives us another 2, this of green, and this one gives us 2 of any color. But it's a bit steep for what it does, so we've decided to upgrade this card and replace it with a different card. We thought it was a little bit light on removal, so we decided to put in and upgrade this card into Imprisoned in the Moon. For 2 and a blue, it's an aura, it's an enchantment, and we can enchant either a creature, a land, or a planeswalker. And now that permanent is a colorless land, which can tap for a colorless mana pool, for a colorless mana, and loses all card types and abilities. This is very strong. It hits creatures, it hits lands, planeswalkers. And as long, it doesn't get rid of it, so if you hit your opponent's commander, it's not like it goes back to the command zone, so they won't be able to recast it. So it's very, very strong, great upgrade card, and that is the last of the utility cards. So let's have a look at the lands. Wizards of the Coast divided the lands into 9 plains, 6 islands, 8 forests, and 16 non-basic lands. Now let's have a look at the non-basic lands that they put in. First, they have Meandering River, which comes in tapped but can give us either a white or a blue. Tranquil Expanse, which also comes in tapped but gives us either a green or a white. And Woodland Stream, which comes in tapped but gives us either a green or a blue. Then we have Tranquil Cove, which also comes in tapped, gives us a white or a blue, but now also gives us a life when it comes in, which is exactly the same as Blossoming Sands, but now gives us a green or a white, and the same as Thornwood Falls, but now gives a green or a blue when it taps. Then we have Azorius Chancery. Now when it enters the battlefield, it's going to be entering tapped, and we're going to have to return it back to our hand unless we return a land we control back to our hand. The fact that we have to return a land back to our hand, that's bad, but this land now taps for both a white and a blue, which is very nice, which is very similar to Selesnya Sanctuary, but now gives us a green and a white, and Simic Growth Chamber, which can tap for a green and a blue. Then we have a Crocin Verge, and enters tapped, can tap for a colorless, but we could also pay 2 mana, tap it, and sacrifice it to search our library for a forest card and a plains card and put them onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle our library. Then we have Seaside Citadel comes in tap, but gives us either a green, a white, or a blue, which is exactly the colors that we want, so it's nice. And we have Command Tower, which can tap for mana of any color as long as it's part of our commander's color identity, which means we're always pretty much going to have the colors that we need. Then we have a Forge of Heroes, which is a new card for this set. It taps for a colorless mana, but we can also tap it and then choose target commander that entered the battlefield this turn. And we're going to be putting a +1/+1 counter on it if it's a creature, and putting a +1/+1 counter on it if it is a planeswalker. So that's nice. We have a planeswalker as the commander in this deck, so that means that we can tap it to make sure it's got an additional loyalty counter. Mossword Bridge is next. It's a green, it's a land that taps for green, and it also has Hideaway, which means when it enters the battlefield, we're going to look at the top 4 cards of our library, put one of those cards underneath it, exile it, and then later on in the game, when we pay a green and tapping it, we can play the exiled card without paying the mana cost. We can only do this, though, if our total power of all our creatures is 10 or greater. And then we round off the deck with Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds. Those are the lands. Let's have a look at the conclusion. In conclusion, do I like the deck? It's difficult to say. There are a lot of good cards in there which do care about enchantments, and in the end, when you have a deck, a pre-constructed deck like this, which is aimed usually mostly at newer commander players, you want the deck to be very flavorful. You want the cards to be very logical. You don't want people to have to think too much about exactly what is this card doing in here. And just adding, for example, simple good cards in there, just saying, okay, well, this is just a really good card, so it should be in there. I don't think that's good enough. And I think this deck, along with the other pre-constructed decks, kind of suffers from that in the sense that even a deck that doesn't care about artifacts, for example, we're just putting in Soul Ring anyway, for example. Still, just because Soul Ring is just a very good card. There are a lot of good cards that do care about enchantments in there, so it is a solid basis. I wouldn't say it's better to just start entirely from scratch. If you do want to build an enchantment deck, this one is a relatively good basis. But as we saw already in the $25 worth of upgrades, with a relatively small amount of money, you can add a lot of solid cards that really make the deck pop a lot more. And therefore, I think the deck could have been a lot better without having to increase the price at all, actually, because there are some expensive cards in there that I don't think are necessary, and there are very cheap enchantment matter cards that didn't make the cut. But I guess that's the fun of upgrading the deck yourself. So as we already said, it's relatively cheap to upgrade this deck because we used only $25, and we were able to make all of the upgrades that you saw in this video. And it was also, of course, a lot of fun to evaluate all of this. If you want us to make more videos like this, consider heading over to patreon.com/budgetmtgdecks and donating as little as $1 a month. It would really help out the show and allows us to expand and make more videos like these. Also join us on the socials, so on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter @budgetmtgdecks, so we can discuss these cards, tell us what you think of these pre-constructed decks, and maybe what other decks you would like to include in this deck. And of course, finally, don't forget to subscribe over here on YouTube for the most powerful decks and advice everyone can afford. And if you do subscribe, don't forget to hit the little bell button to be part of the notification squad. So I guess that's it. Thanks for watching. I'm David, and this was Budget MTG Decks.